Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rei-Lin bringing you another premium tank review. This time, it's the Typhoon II. It might be called the Typhoon II, but I like Typhoon. I think it sounds a little bit better. This is a tank destroyer, and if you're a fan of World of Tanks, you're going to kind of recognize the style of tank destroyer that this is. It is a non-turreted, pretty much the same as no other tank in Armored Warfare. It's kind of unique, and it's going to run you. It's one of the tanks actually that you can't buy in game. You have to go to the purchase gold and buy one of the collector's editions. Operation Typhoon. For $40, you get this tank plus some premium account time of 60 days, 3,250 gold, 3 million credits, and a 25% credit and reputation boost for a whole week. You also get the achievement Typhoon. It's going to run you $40. And if you don't want to listen to me prattle on about the statistics on this tank, want to just see how it does in some gameplay, you can click up here at the top of your screen here in just a second and click that and go straight there and watch the action. For everybody else, let's talk about this tank. And do I think it is worth it? Looking at the details, you're going to see real quick that this is a tank destroyer like no other. The damage, 653 damage per shot. Now keep in mind, I got some retrofits in here increasing that damage by quite a large amount, and it's definitely reflected in these stats, but it's going to give you an idea of just what this thing is going to be capable of. 653 damage per shot with 287 millimeters of penetration. At tier 6, that is really good. And I actually have the heat loaded, so that's what the statistics are with the heat. If I was to load the armor piercing, the damage would drop down to 465 a shot, but the penetration would jump up to 326, which is more than enough to go through pretty much the front of anything, even at tier 8, even if it's a main battle tank. So, that's a pretty good positive right there. And imagine that. Look at that. It's from Switzerland. It's not a Russian tank. When you got damage and pen, it's crazy. The damage per minute, 7,279 at tier 6. That's insane. That is extremely good. But now we're going to get to the part that really sucks about this tank. Now the health is 1,445. It's average for tier 6. Tank destroyers, light tanks, AFVs, pretty much all tier 6s have about 1,100 to 1,500, 1,600. The main battle tanks have a little bit more. So that's it's sort of in the middle. It's not bad. It's not great. But as you can see right here, this doesn't have a turret, so it's only got the hull armor, and it's only 50 millimeters in the front, 35 on the side, and 25 at the rear. There is no turret, so there is no armor. But you can see that there is some weird angled stuff going on the front of this thing, and this gun mantlet looks just like a giant tank door. It's just this huge thick piece of metal. It's got odd angles on the side. It's got some what looks like space armor. So yeah, this thing could bounce pretty much an autocannon from tier 4, maybe tier 5, probably not anything from tier 6. This thing is not meant to take damage. It has got one job and one job only. That is to sit in a bush or sit way far away in the back of the pack, unloading on unsuspecting victims with its massive damage and penetration. But it does go over 70 kilometers per hour, and it only takes 4.7 seconds to get from 0 to 32 kilometers an hour. That's pretty damn good. That's beating a lot of light tanks and AFVs to the bushes. I mean, this thing can keep right up with it. And I'll mention right here, even though there's no statistics that say it, the hull traverse on this thing is insanely fast. I mean, I'm talking 60-some degrees plus per second. This thing cannot be circle strafed unless you put it into a wall where it can't turn at all. It's very much like the E25 in a lot of ways from World of Tanks. You're just not going to circle around this thing. Even in a light tank, this thing can keep up just by turning its hull. But even if it has to turn the hull, you don't have camo nets or anything like in World of Tanks that it's going to disable anyway. And you can see that the camouflage value, keeping in mind that I have put camo on this that increases it just a little bit more, is 0.355 across the board, which is really, really, really good, especially for tier 6 tank destroyers. And with a view range, surprisingly, 442 meters, you're really going to be able to spot for yourself if there isn't any light tanks or AFVs out there doing it for you. Hopefully you don't have to, because like I said, with no armor, this thing's going to get into a lot of trouble if you're facing down more than one tank, and if it sees you. The gun is really good. We're getting down into the nitty gritty. This has 12 degrees of gun depression. I don't think there's many tanks in Armor Warfare that have more than this. I don't think there's a single one outside of this one that even has 12 degrees. There might be a few that I'm overlooking, but as you see, 12 degrees of gun depression, which makes this thing extremely dangerous for ridge fighting. Believe it or not, you can actually take this thing and shoot. You can sit just enough over a hill to just get the gun over, and you could literally aim it like that over a hill and be fairly well protected from anyone that's trying to hit you, because there's just not going to be much of your tank that's popping up over the hill. I mean, this thing isn't as low profile as the RDF light tank, for example, but it's pretty low to the ground. I mean, this little hump kind of sucks, but it does do an adequate job of staying pretty well hidden. The turret traverse, 32.76 degrees. It's not really a traverse of a turret since it doesn't have a turret, but you know, it can swing left and right pretty fast. Reload time 5.39 seconds. That's pretty good. It's not super fast like the RDF light tank. It's not super fast, kind of like the VFM, but it is very adequate for a tank destroyer, especially when it's doing this much damage per shot. The accuracy is crazy good at 0.07, which I would expect from any tank destroyer. But the targeting time, 2.36 seconds. It's not horrible, but it would be nice if that was around 2 seconds. Like I said, since you don't have the armor, you don't really want to be popping up, especially if you get spotted for too long. But the aim time, you can get that down with some retrofits. I'm not using anything really to get the aim time much lower than that. So even though the aim time is a little bit crappy, everything else about the tank is just really good. It looks like they did add the max turret rotation, 30 degrees. I mean, that's still more than adequate to get the traverse. You can practically aim around corners with this thing if you're really good at angling. But since this is part of a package deal, to get this tank, you have to spend $40. Do I think it is worth it? If you like this style of tank destroyer, if you played World of Tanks where the majority of the tank destroyers are just like this, where they don't have turrets, they're big, they got a big gun on the front, they fire fast to do a lot of damage per shot. If that's your style, this is definitely worth the money. It's definitely worth every penny, because this thing can really knock the shit out of everything on the battlefield. It's not without its flaws. Obviously, no armor, no turret, and if it gets spotted, because it has no armor and it has no turret, it's going to get wrecked pretty quick. But the amount of damage you can do, you can literally shoot your way out of trouble with this thing. It is really, really fun to play, and you can really rack up the damage, especially in PvE in this thing. Do I think it's good? Hell yeah, I think this is one of the best tank destroyers in the game, especially when it comes to the gun depression and the gun handling. A lot of the other wheeled tank destroyers in the game right now, they just don't have very much gun depression. They don't have nearly the kind of camo that this does, and they definitely don't do nearly the kind of damage that this thing does. And as you can see, it's not a wheeled tank destroyer either. It's got tracks, so it is really down to whether or not you enjoy this style of play. I mean, pretty much all the other tank destroyers in the game are wheeled, and they have turrets, so this is kind of like the odd tank out. So if you really like this style, pick it up. It's an awesome tank. But let's talk now commander and crew. It is a premium tank. I don't really think there are that many good tank destroyer commanders. If I was to pick somebody other than Maximilian, I would probably go with Sabrina, just because she adds more vision range. She adds more aim speed, which this thing can use because the aim speed isn't the best, and it gives she gives higher camouflage values, which is a tank destroyer's saving grace. So if you don't want to use Max, or you don't have Max, go with Sabrina Washington. She's really good. Crew skills. Spin to win, hull traverse speed improved by 10%. This thing, like I said, already has a ridiculously fast hull traverse speed. But just to play a little safe, I like to be able to make that a little bit better with spin to win. Improve my hull traverse by 10% so that it's easier to back around corners or sit there and wiggle a little bit faster, maybe juke a shot, maybe get lucky with a miracle bounce. Off-road driving, acceleration increased on off-road terrain by 10%. Yes, every tank should have this. There's absolutely no downside to taking this skill. This tank is extremely fast. It can be very mobile. There's no reason for it to sit in the same bush for the entire map unless the enemy team is literally not coming for you and they're playing right into your hands. You are a very, very, very mobile tank. There's no reason you shouldn't just be driving around, picking a spot where you can best put your gun to use. Quick draw, aim speed. This tank does need some aim speed. I would go with quick draw all the time just to improve it by 10%. Shoot from the hip. The accuracy when the circle is at its largest improved by 20%. The accuracy on this tank is already really good. You're going to be sniping pretty much exclusively in this tank if you want to survive anyway. And so just so that it works with the aim speed to start the circle a little bit smaller by 20% with shoot from the hip so that your aim speed improves even quicker. These two just seem to me like they work together really well, so that's exactly what I go for. Rapid fire reload time reduced by 2.5%. Perfect. This thing is already a monster on the DPM meter, so I might as well make it 2.5% better. There's no reason not to take rapid fire. Explosive shells. They're really, since it reloads so fast already, I went ahead and took explosive shells. Because this thing hits so hard and has great penetration, you're going to be hitting tanks a lot, and you're going to be going right through them a lot. So I decided that instead of taking something like preparation, which improves my ammo swap speed by 20%, I went ahead and took this just because I wanted to take out modules a little bit easier. This thing does a lot of damage, and if you get lucky with a heat shell, for example, in the back of a light tank, you can not only do a lot of damage, you can hit and destroy 2 or 3 modules at the same time. You're almost like an artillery sometimes if you get lucky on where you're hitting and you know where to shoot. So that's personal preference. If you want, you can take preparation to, if you have to do some swapping back and forth with your ammo types, that will improve it by 20%. Well, we got 3 types of ammunition here. You got your heat and you got your armor piercing. You also have your high explosive. I never take high explosive even in PvP. It's just, to me, it's not worth it. I almost, with this gun, I don't worry about not doing damage with this tank. I mainly PvE though, so I've never found a reason to take any high explosive. So this thing is going to get quite a few rounds. As you can see, I wasn't even fully loaded in it. But usually I would swap these and take the armor piercing first. But because this thing has such awesome penetration at 287 with the heat shells, and the reload is already really good, I went ahead and put my heat first. There's a lot of light tanks and tanks that don't have ERA, even at tier 6, tier 7, and tier 8. Now, as long as you are understanding on which tanks have that ERA and which you don't want to be shooting the heat at, you can pretty much keep the heat loaded, except when you absolutely need to swap over to your armor piercing. If you're more comfortable with just doing a little bit less damage and giving yourself a little bit more penetration, and you don't really care about doing, almost 100 or 120 or so more damage per shot, you can just load up with your AP and keep a few heat on the side. This is personal preference. This is what I'm taking. Consumables. As always, I take the premium versions of the spare parts, the energy drink, and the medical kit. You could take the repair kit and the first aid kit if you want to save some money. You could take the protein bar instead of the energy drink to save even more money. Or you might throw in the fire extinguishers instead of the energy drink. I don't get caught on fire at all in this tank. Never have. In PvP and later on in future patches, that might change. So the fire extinguishers may become a necessity, sort of like it is for a lot of tanks in World of Tanks, for example. If you're going to do any kind of PvE, low, mid, or high tier, field maintenance kit is a must. It restores 20% of your tank's health and gives you back all of your ammunition. this thing shoots pretty damn quick. On a long map, you're going to run really low on ammunition. I like to not run out of one ammo type or the other in case, I'm going up against, say, a Terminator and all I've got is heat shells. It's going to be a bad time. So this is really useful. It's 12,000 credits. It's a drop in the bucket. Go ahead and take your field maintenance kit so that you can stay on the battlefield, lighten enemies up, and without worrying about running out of ammunition. Retrofits, I always take experimental propellant, and I always take the chrome barrel lining just for the damage increase. And what a damage increase it is, 7.5% and another nearly 5%. So you're looking close to 12% damage increase. And for this thing, already hits like a truck. Adding these just makes it hit that much freaking harder. I took the advanced thermal sleeve. It's got two universal slots and a firepower slot. Now you could put in anything you want. The stabilizers, the magnetic actuator if you're worried about aim time, which might be a good choice on this tank. The aim time isn't great, so you might switch that out. I went with the reload time. This is just a pure damage per minute increase because I think a tank destroyer's job is to be destroying tanks as quickly as possible to save your allies in battle. I wanted it to shoot as quick as I can. Once I get the Mark II, this will go up to 7.5% reduction on my reload time. So that's going to shoot even faster. The damage per minute is going to go up even more and turn this thing into just one hell of a rapid fire DPM monster. So that is, in a nutshell, the Typhoon II. This is a really good tank destroyer. If you don't like the wheeled tank destroyers in Armored Warfare and you want something a little bit different, this is definitely a little bit different. It does pretty much exactly what a tank destroyer, in my eyes, should be doing. An assload of damage from as far away as possible, hiding in a bush in the back, sniping. And this has all the tools it needs. It has the speed, it has the reload, and I think it just does everything you want it to do. I think it's worth it. Whether you think it's worth $40, you might have to consider that just for yourself. It does give you some premium time. It does give you some credits, and that helps obviously for buying tanks later on. But in my opinion, it's worth the $40. I mean, that's even less than most of the World of Tanks premium tanks that they have, and you get a little bit more. So if you want to see just how much damage this thing can do, how good this thing is in actual combat, stick around. I got a replay for you. See you on the battlefield. And here we are on the Red Possum map. Now this isn't exactly the best map for a tank destroyer, especially one kind of as fragile as this, and there's just not that much cover, bushes and trees and whatnot, and of course, you can't get that far away because there's all these tanks and towers and just a lot of crap in the way of making any real long-range shots. So it's sort of a close quarters map, but I end up not doing too bad. End up getting a little stuck here, and I have to apologize. These pop-ups on my screen, my game crashed when I was trying to get a good replay a little bit earlier, and every time my game crashes, it resets pretty much all the tutorials and stuff in the game. And one of these days I'll figure out how to turn them off, if you can even turn them off. I don't even remember there being an option. And we're just zeroing in here. This is obviously updated on the map here, so these are the new spawn locations. And I have no idea where that shell went. I thought I hit him right in the roof, but the game said otherwise. Just looking for the shot. I thought I had a good shot there, but my shell decided to hit the hole there instead. Put in another good shot. Of course, I start to freak out because I thought he was going to fire back, and my partner there to my right saved me by finishing him off. Oh, the side of enemy tanks. That's where you want to be. Side and rear, this thing just destroys stuff. I was actually trying to set the Challenger on fire by shooting him towards the rear of the tank where the fuel tanks were, but I didn't get lucky that time. Decided to start pushing up because I know at this point about where all the spawns are going to be. Come around here, thought I'd get a nice easy shot, and I would have, except there is a dead body in the way, so lose out a little bit of damage there. Now, usually tanks that spawn on my right there come in a pretty big wave, and the last place I wanted to be was right where they spawn, because I would be the first thing to get spotted, and they would all turn and blow me away. And since, like I said, this thing has no armor, I figured I might as well get a little further away like this and just start laying in some shells as they spawn and move forward. And that's exactly what I do. I just kind of pull up here, trying to get a little long-range sniping going on to help out the cap. Looking for a shot. Unfortunately, there's a tank in the way, and I can't really get a good shot. Now, there's a nice... looks like a Romka 99. Now you can penetrate the sides of that tank pretty well if you have high enough penetration, and I do, so boom, right through. The Terminator, the Romka 99, the Terminator 2, they all have very high, or at least decent side armor, but if your penetration is good enough with your armor piercing, you can shoot right through it. It has ERA, so don't fire heat, but it's still semi-weak against normal armor piercing shells. Oh, my old friend the Weasel. Except I'm in a tank now where the Weasel can actually be a true threat. As you can see, he's just plugging away. And he ended up taking down most of the building, clouding my shot, and I ended up flubbing the shot right into the building, thinking I could shoot through it, which didn't happen. Now everything's going to start spawning off to the east, so I use my speed just to get right up into the thick of things. Come around the corner here. Expeditionary tank, he ain't looking at me, and now he is dead because of that. Bagel Panzer. They seem to like the Bagel Panzer spawns on this map for whatever reason, which is good for me since it's light armor. I don't have to worry about shooting anywhere but just hit the tank. Come around here and get a little bit like, uh-oh, there's an MPT-70 over there, and I definitely don't want to take a shell from him. He'll take easily about half of my health off if he hits me. So I kind of back off, start using this rock. And as you can see, the gun arc is pretty good, but then I ended up taking a hit from the damn MBT-70 anyway, just because he decided he was going to focus on me. But since he fired, and I know I can beat his reload by at least 3 times, just put another shell in. Yeah, this guy is looking right at me, and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. Let's get the hell back out of his line of fire. Let my teammates, who all have main battle tanks, take some of the shots for me. I get a little tiny bit of the tank that I can shoot at, right on the roof, went right through. The accuracy on this tank is very good. It allows you to make some really tough shots. Another MBT-70 spawns, and I'm like, I ain't sticking around for this. I'm going to get around here, around this tank, so I can have a little bit of cover and let somebody else get spotted. Take the first few shots at him so he kind of focuses on them. And this is kind of like one of those oddities with Armor Warfare. If you're around an object like this, it tends to not let you shoot where the object ends. There's a little bit of like an invisible wall that won't let you fire. You can shoot, you're just not going to go anywhere with your shell. Your shell's just going to disappear. Now I saw that the Stingray had already fired, and he's got a pretty decent reload, but he's not going to beat me, so I decided just to stay out there and risk taking another shot so that I could put in enough damage so my teammates could finish him off. Just looking for a shot here. I thought maybe I could shoot under the dead tank, but I can't. It is a weasel. I decided, hell with it, I'm just going to move up. When one of my teammates decides to spam the final objective, even though we have 3 minutes left on that objective and 2.5 minutes or so to defend the dock. Thus, we had plenty of freaking time to get that final objective. But considering I'm the fastest of everyone that's left alive, decided I might as well go over here before the spawns get completely out of control, because the longer the game goes on, it seems like more and more tanks spawn. So I knew there were going to be some spawning, maybe to the west, and artillery sometimes spawns out there, and definitely some to the north. So I do a big circle around just to keep some cover between me and the enemy tanks, so I could get up here and happily cap this little point. Secondary objectives are pretty important just because you get a lot more experience and money for doing them. So when you can, it's definitely advisable to go ahead and grab them. So I just go ahead, fly around the corner there, got the side of that Stingray, and just decided, boom, finish him off. Poor enemy tank there. Was just driving around like a bit of an idiot there. Got him in the rear. Now here you can watch how the gun depression works on this thing. I'm still behind this hill, and I can take shots at these tanks, and they're all firing at me. You can see them hitting the dirt right there. I do take a hit here in just a minute, but it's a very lucky shot. I see that was just a complete, utter lucky snapshot from that Stingray. There's normally no way. He can barely see anything on the top of my tank. You see he took another shot there, and he completely whiffed into the dirt. But I can shoot them back, and it's very hard for them to hit me. Here's another Romka. At first I thought maybe I'd shoot him in the side, but he gave me a better shot at his turret, so I took that. And of course the rear of the tank, I'm not firing heat, so I know I'm going to go right through. And boom, that was the match, and it was a pretty good game. Made 4,200 reputation. This isn't a double. I'd already played a few games in this. Unfortunately, I did not come in top of the damage. Russian tanks generally beat me on most matches where I can't snipe. Didn't mitigate really any damage, but I did make decent profit, 165,000 credits. So, like I said, I think if you enjoy the World of Tanks style of play when it comes to tank destroyers, where you're not turreted, you have tracks, you're stealthy, and you're fast, this is definitely a good tank. You know, it is in a package for $40. It's a little bit steep, but like I said, most decent tier 6, 7, 8 premium tanks in World of Tanks cost about $40 or $50. For me, definitely worth it, but I also got it along with a bunch of other tanks that you can't get anymore because I bought a Founders Pack. I think it's truly worth it if you're into this style of play. There's no real downside to it. I have a lot of fun with this tank. It's very, very brutal. In PvP, where the maps are even bigger and you can get further away from your opponents with even more cover, more bushes and trees, this thing is extremely deadly. And it's just a lot of fun. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video. If you got some use out of it, if you enjoyed it, please press that like button down below. It does help out my channel. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please click down at the bottom of your screen right now, and you'll get the latest updates every time I upload a video on Armored Warfare, The Division, Blade and Soul, or Black Desert Online, which has just came out for those people that bought Founders Packs. So, I will catch you guys all next time. Take care.